Suella Cowardman's cowardly attack on tent dwellers is simply shocking. Simply shocking. Uh, you know, this will encompass not only the people who are homeless because they have no choice, but also those people who, for example, are sitting in tents outside the Foreign Office, outside number 10, people whose families have been punished in Iran, people who are opposing the Iranian systems. Uh, we can think of many people who have been sitting in tents as a form of protest and and have indeed been the victims of aggressive attacks from recent marches. Suella Braverman's attack is cowardly, and charities say that the problem is driven not by a lifestyle choice, as she claims, but what I would call tent rent divide, the absence of some form of accommodation halfway between a tent and and meeting monthly rent for a room where a person can shift focus from the constant battle with cold, danger, and hunger to achieving goals like getting qualifications, training, holding down a job, receiving basic dole from the government because you've got a home that is registered, improving your mental health. The tent rent divide is what is keeping people on the streets. But the government could fill the gap with intermediate, subsidised, temporary, halfway accommodation, or by allowing charities to fill the gap, but it chooses instead to punish the consequences of their omission. This is simply horrendous. Stella claims that weak policies in San Francisco led to large numbers of homeless on the streets. But the opposite is true. The opposite of what she says. Stella. 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 Stella Cruella. Oh, she is the one at fault, and she's pointing to America as the icon of all misery. The policies against the homeless in San Francisco have traditionally been harsher than the policies that we've got in the UK, with people regularly being arrested for giving food or blankets to the homeless. This is what we are surely taught to do on Sundays. This is what we are taught to do in Christianity and Judaism and Islam. Your religious belief is measured by your adherence to the principles of charity, tzedakah, of loving kindness, of chesed, of charity is built into the main religions and Buddhism and the mendicant tradition, the respect for the homeless, the respect for the vagrant. So we can think recently the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, who defined himself effectively by living in a tent, by going around begging and talking to animals. It is really shocking that Suella Braverman, Stella Cowardman, Suella. I hardly want to pronounce her name correctly. I don't actually, but because she is bringing disgrace not only on her family and on the wider drinks cabinet in the House of Commons and the government, but she's also bringing shame onto our society and to the British society, which has traditionally been extremely helpful to people who are homeless. Yes, there was a period during the Thatcher time when there was a sort of homeless city in the middle of London, and that was shameful too. But what Suella Braverman is planning to do is to attack the homeless themselves. The homeless are no longer a result of divisive policies. The homeless are now becoming a policy in themselves, and it needs to be resisted. Solutions like mini houses and hard-shell tents provided by charities have been ripped down or banned, and more banning is due, keeping people in the wrong side or on the wrong side of the tent rent divide. And another thought here is that she incites good old British xenophobia. So she says it's not, these people are not just homeless, these people are migrants. She's back to her racism, suggesting that many homeless people are from abroad. Well, it begs the question why they're not in her hotels. So is it foreigners always who are to blame for everything that is wrong in this country, Suella Braverman? Is it always foreigners or the first generation of foreigners who settled in this country, Suella Braverman, who are to blame for everything that is wrong? This is absurd. This is absurd. You take responsibility for your own actions, and you look to the government to support you when those actions go wrong. And that's what the government is there for, to lend a helping hand, to provide some sort of solution, a framework to easing you out of your tent and back into society. But what about those British people who are abroad, who fall on hard times and end up in tents abroad? Do we not hope that foreign governments will be truly compassionate to them? We can think particularly of the fellow who's recently got out of prison, who's living in a tent near Seville, I believe. Are we not going to be compassionate to him? Are we not expecting the Spanish government to be compassionate to him? Or are we expecting the Spanish government to confiscate his tent? Because, by the way, Suella, you still haven't paid out the compensation that he is due for being incarcerated in a British prison for 20-odd years, well after the time that you knew, the British government knew, the British system knew that he was entirely innocent. Well after that time. And it's not just a couple of months ago that he was released. He was released a couple of years ago and has been waiting and waiting and waiting for the government, for the system to get its finger out. The same thing with Windrush. The same thing with the Grenfell Tower. Words, the same thing with Ukraine. Words and, quote, commitments are not enough. You need to follow up your commitments with actions. My goodness, can you act quick when the boot is on the other foot? I'm sure you'll be removing tents at a rate of knots. The moment the ink is dry, well, barely dry, on the order. But when the boot is on the other foot, you're slow, you're sluggish, you're indulgent, you're sleaze-ridden, and you just don't care. So, think about British people abroad in tents, and we hope that the foreign governments are going to look after them. And yet, foreigners in tents, contempt from Suella Braverman, contempt from the Home Office. British people in tents, contempt from the Home Office. Oh, but in Suella Braverman's rhetoric, they're not British. They're probably all foreigners. Rubbish. Rubbish, rubbish, rubbish. There but for the grace of God, Suella Braverman. There but for the grace of God. And, just because you're lucky doesn't mean anyone else is lucky. Luck has a lot to do with your life opportunities. And we're all only months away from living in a tent. So wake up, smell the roses, and look after people who are less fortunate than you are, Suella Braverman. Because it's disgusting. Are we saying that we simply do not care about their fate? we do care.